Good afternoon all. Daniela Williams, good afternoon. Kathy Belfon, hi Kathy. Sarah Richards, Michelle Nero. Julia Spooner, good afternoon. Clinton Alain, Dexter James, Pauline Buckmeyer, good afternoon to all of you. Sadiqa, O'Brien, Leonard Baines, Denise. Hi Claire, thank you again. Mr. Music Mana, Kathy Ann Best, Leon Joseph, greetings. We have some rain on our side, Leon. I understand you all had some serious rain over the past week. Plenty to talk today, Michelle. Unfortunately, I don't have time to touch on it. There's just a lot. A lot can happen in a week under this administration. But I have an event to attend this afternoon, so I had to see how quickly I can wrap up. So many things to talk about. Natalie F. Who else is there? Brian Batiste, Martin Phillips, Neil Francois, always present. So good afternoon to all of you guys. Let me jump into it one time because I have limited time today. So much happened last week. As you know, I was out of the jurisdiction. So but I was still keeping abreast as much as I could have of what was taking place in the country. And as I said, never a dull moment with this administration. Just like, I don't know if they have a running competition on who could come up with the most crazy, ludicrous, insane things to do to keep the population on their toes. So on Friday, there was the debate in Parliament, 44 pages. This government is now making it a habit of coming with this basket of legislation, a whole set of different things all lumped into one, and they give us like a week, not even a week, 4 days in which to prepare. And to really, preparation for the budget debate is not just simply you get the email from the clerk of the house and then you read through it and make notes and come and speak. You have to caucus and we discuss our individual positions, and then we will take a decision how we're going to vote. What are the issues? Is there something we could support? Is there something that we have issues with? What recommendations, what amendments we would like to put forward? So 4 days for that basket of legislation was totally ridiculous. But we understand now why they did it, because there were certain things in that bill that they brought on Friday that they were hoping to hide. Key among them being the increase in the borrowing limit from 50 million to $45 billion. 50 million, as Annie loves to say, million to $45 billion. These are the same people who for the last 10 years complained bitterly about how much the PNM was borrowing, and they're increasing the debt to GDP ratio, and all of this borrowing that they're going to do is for our children and grandchildren to pay, and they're leveraging on the income, the future income of children and grandchildren. They had all these issues when the last administration wanted to borrow money for things like paving roads and so on. The supporters of the UNC jump out themselves. All they want to do is borrow. They knew what the public debt was. All of these things, now the same people have nothing to say about that. As I said, I wasn't in the house on Friday, but from what I would have seen, the contributions of a couple members on our side, I did hear Brian Manning. He was particularly good, and Brian would have exposed a lot of what are some of the issues that we had in that particular bit of legislation. And I saw where Stuart would have been denied the opportunity to speak, Stuart being one of our more prolific debaters. And I suspect that the reason why it went down that road is because they did not want to allow members of the opposition to further interrogate and to expose some of the things that were in that legislation that they brought, that they didn't want the public to know. And as Brian said, that particular clause 14 that dealt with the increase in the borrowing limit, the ceiling from 50 million to 45 billion, they just squeezed that in there in the hope that, well, maybe they mightn't notice it, but all of these other clauses and so on, perhaps that might escape them, but it didn't. And they did not want others to expound on it, and Stuart certainly would have put some licks on them with respect to that. And so we saw where, notwithstanding the fact that Stuart would have indicated to the Speaker that he wished to speak, the Speaker would have recognized the Minister of Finance, and he being the mover of the motion, once he gets up to speak, that's it. The debate is wound up and nobody else is allowed to speak after that. Now, what is supposed to happen is that prior to the debate, the leader of government business, Barry Padarath, and the chief whip, Marvin Gonzalez, would confer. They would discuss, well, okay, how many speakers we intend to field on our side, how many they intend to field on their side, so that we don't have issues like that. And it is my understanding that that took place. Notwithstanding that fact, we still saw what took place, where it is that the speaker would have invited the minister to wind up the debate. Now, given the protestations from our side, one would have thought that Mr. Tanko would have said, all right, Mr. Speaker, let them continue to speak. What was the haste in winding up the debate? We in the opposition have limited spaces, limited fora, such as that, where you would have a significant viewership to be able to speak to the issues that we believe affect the people and to explain to the people why we take a position. Now, when you wind up the debate so early without allowing our speakers to be able to present their case, to present our case, then it puts us at a disadvantage, because then people will say, well, all the opposition doing is opposing, and voting no. But if we are denied the opportunity to tell you why we vote no, so people could better understand where we are coming from. We are not mad people who just say, well, all right, everything we're going to vote no on. No, that is not how it works. And the fact is that this government is not willing to entertain any, notwithstanding their claims week before, they are not willing to entertain any amendments from us. They are not willing to entertain any contributions from us. Once they bring their legislation, they are satisfied that this is good as is and there needs to be no changes. And so they come there, and as the Prime Minister said, they don't need our support. They have the numbers to pass the legislation. They don't need our small maxi, as she likes to mention, and others, to assist them to pass any legislation. And so they will do what they want, and we are powerless in that regard. Again, we didn't give ourselves 13 seats. The population did that, right? Or some of our supporters who decided to stay away from the polls, those who decided they wanted to punish the PNM for the 4%, now they get the 10%. But there's an issue with the back pay, because the CPO is saying, well, you will get piece in cash and piece in non-cash. And the PSA is saying we want all cash, right? Where does non-cash thing come from? We don't want no bonds, that money tie up for donkey years, and every 6 months we have to be getting dividends. We want all of our money now. People don't plan for that money. Who is going to take this money and fix their house? Who going and buy a new car? And now they come in to tell the people non-cash. Where that come from? But the CPO saying, well, he's not at fault if Felicia misunderstood or didn't understand what he was saying or what was said in the meeting. So now they're at an impasse, and the Prime Minister, playing smart with foolishness, came on Friday and tried to pull a fast one with a statement talking nonsense about the CPO as an independent entity and they can't instruct the CPO what to do. But you all instructed the CPO to start negotiations at 10% to start. So it could have gone beyond the 10%. Could the CPO have done that? You all say 10. Could he have said, well, get them 15 or 20? And then the Prime Minister is now saying, I think that, well, when you add the 10% increase in the salary plus the consolidation of COLA and all of that, it actually working out to 15%. But the Minister of Finance is also on record as having said that non-cash and non-cash settlement has to be a part of the equation. He said that because, as we told you, they did not have the money. They don't have the money. So they're trying to see if they could pacify the PSA by giving you an advance, a cash advance on the back pay. And the rest, when will it come? As the CPO would have said at the conclusion of the negotiations, it may not even come within this financial year, right? So it may not, all of the back pay may not even be paid in one financial year, so it might be paid in tranches over a series of years. And then we have another negotiation period coming up very soon, for which, well, back pay would also have to be paid, because I think it's for the period 22 or 23 to 25 or something like that. So that's another liability that the government is going to have to face. So it is a possibility that this back pay might drag out over the period of the full 5 years that they're here. But I remind you that on the last occasion when they gave a generous pay raise to public servants, which would have been in 2013, all right, they didn't pay the back pay. It was the PNM. It took the PNM coming in 2015 to find the money, the $6 billion plus, to pay that back pay, that debt that they inherited from the People's Partnership. And they paid it in cash, right? In cash is what it was paid. As difficult as it was to find the money, given the financial constraints that the country found itself in at the time, Mr. Imbud went and worked magic, and he found the money and he paid you all in cash. This government promised only 10%, got your votes, and now they're trying to see if they could wiggle themselves out of it and throw the CPO under the bus to say, well, don't blame us if the CPO is the CPO, and the CPO, all of a sudden the CPO independent. All of a sudden the CPO is no longer taking instructions from the Minister of Finance. So the CPO could call the shot. It's not for the CPO to find the money, so therefore he cannot make decisions and write checks that the government cannot cash. That is not how it works. But Mrs. Pasabi-Sessa could feed that rubbish and she could sell that loo to her supporters. But for the rest of us, we know better. So now Felicia is calling the CPO the chief personnel obstructionist, when he is simply taking instructions from the boss, Mr. Tanku. And the fact that she wants to focus on the CPO and totally ignore the fact that the minister himself is reported to have said that non-cash payment must form part of the equation. It is non-negotiable, because he does not have the $3.8 billion in cash plus the 400 and some odd million dollars that must now be paid, that he must now find in addition every year to pay these increased salaries. He cannot. And even when one looks at the breakdown of the 10%, you could see that it was done in such a way to try and minimize that back pay, the impact of that back pay, as much as they could. Because if they had put the bigger figure, the bigger percentages in the earlier periods, then the back pay would have worked out to more, as the PNM had been telling you all what it would have worked out to. But now they open a whole Pandora's box and a can of worms, because you have the other unions that would have settled for the 4% and now say, well, we want 10, pay us the difference. And if the government holds firm, as we heard Clyde Elder saying, well, they can't come now and piggyback on what the PSA did. And the PSA, basically what Elder is saying is that the PSA would have been rewarded for their political patronage, for their support of the UNC. So if all they want big money, or they want 10% and whatever else, you have to support the UNC. Labour has capitulated at the counter of expediency. Because with all the people who are being fired, when Mr. Elder and Mr. Kiza and the rest of them, Roger and all of these guys, when they weren't part of government and they were fighting the PNM tooth and nail, if one man get fired, all of them had to put out a press release to talk about how the PNM wicked and evil and oppressive. Tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs in the space of 7 months. And all of them quiet, calling people, these fired persons, collateral damage and all of these things. And all of a sudden, Labour has become anti-Labour, and they accuse the PNM of being anti-Labour. Really? Mr. Elder, who in his first contribution in the Parliament jammed the last administration talking about when he was fired and when the petroleum workers was fired, where was the hotline? And where was the hotline for him? And the hotline for this one and the hotline for that one? Where is the hotline for all of the 50, 60, 70,000 people and counting, Mr. Elder, who are now out of jobs with Christmas just under 3 weeks away? And Christmas is looking very bleak for a lot of these people. Very, very bleak. I can tell you, a lot of the CPAP and URP workers, they're looking all over the place to see when there are Christmas parties and so on being held, so that their children could enjoy some measure of happiness or Christmas cheer. And I'm grateful to those persons who would have made donations. Again, let me single out my good friend Claire, who would have brought some toys for us this morning to assist with our Christmas party that is taking place on the 14th. of December, and for the other persons as well, Idris, who has also contributed. And thank you so much for that, Idris, and your contribution will certainly go a long way towards putting together hampers to assist the many families who have been reaching out to me for assistance. But who is speaking for these people? Roger made a cameo appearance the other day to talk about, he went to the conference in Hyatt, and he went there to talk about, to be interviewed by the media, to say that the patriotic energies and OWTU would be playing a pivotal role in the reopening of the refinery whenever that happens. How? I don't know. I know any things that irks me, and the hypocrisy of the UNC, and to some extent, larger Trinidad and Tobago. To date, Ansel Roger and the OWTU have not been made to answer for that fraudulent wire transfer receipt that they tendered in an attempt to get preference to receive the refinery and the last bid rounds under the previous administration, where it was made public that these people, as part of their submissions, would have tendered a fraudulent document purported to be a $1.5 billion wire transfer, when nothing of the sort happened and it was shown to be a fraud. Is that being investigated? Where is the call for these investigations? But the same people who talking about AV drilling and 100 million and who thief and how, and they shut down Petrochen was to cover up. Well, guess what? While the refinery was shut down, all the documents still remain there. Heritage, Paria simply took over the responsibilities of the refinery in terms of the procurement of fuel and so on. So it's not to say that these departments went up in flames, as we would have seen with WASA in 2015, when that last administration would have demitted office. So all the buildings there, all the paperwork there, the UNC has been in office for 7 months now, and you're trying to tell me they can't find one document to show that that the refinery was shut down to protect AV drilling? All these claims and allegations they made and the supporters continue to make. Rowley shut down Petrochen and he shut down the refinery to protect his friend. Well, you all have access to the documents. Show us. The PNM is out of office. They have no control over any of these things anymore. So all the documents there, if the documents were destroyed, how come you all haven't come in 7 months to say, well, look, all of the documents that shows that that is what took place, that the refinery was shut down to protect AV drilling was destroyed. How have they not done that? You know why? Because it wasn't destroyed. And we're not even dealing with physical documents here, right? We are in the age of technology, and a lot of these things are in the cloud. All of this information is there. Yet they have not been able to come forward and present you with one shred of evidence. Same thing with the missing 2.5, 2.6 billion, 3.3 billion, depending on who's speaking. We are into the 8th month of their tenure. And up to now, the Auditor General said the last central bank governor would have prevented her from accessing central bank records and the electronic check clearing system so that she could do an audit to determine whether or not the 2.6 billion was really a system error or if it was stolen or whatever. 7 months